you can unmute and say until like a couple of more minutes.
Hey, Chad, I didn't alternate, sorry.
Okay. I skipped it too.
All right. Tell me your name and then please say it.
This is Shri.
Shri? Okay.
Shri Vidya, yeah.
Navina.
Navina, okay. All right. So it was a good experience for us. First time doing virtual. Anyways, the recordings are there. We kind of little bit messed it up because obviously, you know, it was first time. We were not a professional event company, right? So we a bunch of people coming together, help each other. So it was a little bit, but it went well. Great experience. We had close to max 100 people attending on and off. On an average, we were having like 80 stable. It was good. We had speakers from Tech Mahindra, Bell, and Microsoft. Also, we had Michael Bolton jumped in suddenly and started having some good conversation with us upon our invite. So it was good. The recording is available. I think most probably will be posted soon. So if you guys have missed it, please look it up. Then the other thing that I wanted to also kind of share with you is this beginners track we are continuing. The plan is once the Python program is completed, right? So we will turn this beginners track into test automation track, right? So every Wednesday, same time, 7 to 8, most probably around June, June mid or towards June end, right? We will convert this into a test automation track, and then the Saturday track we will continue to keep it as a intelligent automation track, right? So I know some of you, if not all, are attending both the tracks. So it's going to be, we're not going to add any more Codeathon tracks, right? Just 2 tracks. One is going to be on Wednesday, 7 to 8, 7 to 8:15. That's what the new invitation that we have sent out. And then there is going to be on Saturday, it's going to be again 1 hour. We are going to reduce from 2 hours to 1 hour. That is from 10:30 to 11:45. 15 minutes is something like, some kind of message that I speak and things like that. Normally it takes time. So to give a trainer reduced 1 hour time. So we kind of put it like invitation 1 hour, 15 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. So this beginners track is going to continue after the Python programming will change into a test automation track. And then the Saturday track is going to be reduced to 1 hour starting this week. And then it's going to continue every week instead of 2 weeks. It's going to continue every week. And that's going to be an intelligent automation track. So right now we are training Codeathon. Right now we are training on cloud, and after the cloud, it will start on AI, and then it will continue on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and on that direction, right? So in the test automation, we will start training, mobile testing, web testing, and test ops, how testing and DevOps comes together. So that track will continue till the end. So these are the quick changes that I wanted to say. And we are also thinking of, obviously because of COVID, there was a lot of things that we wanted to do, we couldn't do, but hopefully the new normal situation changes and we are back to the old normal to continue doing a lot of good work. But at least we are thinking of whoever attends the program, for example, the Python program, 80% of the attendance, whoever has 80% or more, we are planning to give some kind of a certificate from Testoper for the completion of that particular community program, right? So this is something that we are planning to do. And we had many other plans, but we will see how that goes. But please continue attending. Take benefit of this. Today we have Shad and Hetal. They are going to swap between them. They're going to continue training you guys on the beginners track. Okay. So the last point to cover up before I hand over it to Shad is we realized, when we had to update some meetings today in Microsoft Teams. So when we are doing that, we realized the Microsoft Teams was behaving in a couple of times what we were not expecting or thought about it would do, right? So what happened was when we tried to change the meeting time and also the recursive part of it, it wanted us to do it 2 times. So we did it 2 times. And every time when we did, instead of sending one email to you all to update the change in the meeting, it sent 2 emails. One is deletion, another one is creation. I don't know why it is doing that instead of just sending 1 email for update. So that kind of created some kind of a spam for you guys today. and also it kind of sent to everybody in our group rather than just sending it to the test for attendees. It picked up all the email address and it sent it out. So it created some kind of a spam today. Sorry about that. It's unintentional. Again, we are learning. Most probably we will make sure next time when we are trying to do, we don't, we try to figure out a way, what exact right way to do from Microsoft before doing it, right? So that created some kind of a spam today. Please ignore those emails. You are here today. Take benefit of this and continue learning and continue supporting us. Refer your friends to join and continue to learn with us and grow and be happy, and all things will be good. All will be well. With that, I will hand over the session to Shad. Shad, please, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks. So today we'll be covering functions. But before we get into that, I'd like to go over a recap of the last session. A lot of people had some questions about when to use for loops, when to use while loops, break, continue, pass, all this stuff. So I'll quickly go over a few use cases of them. So what a while function is, a while function loops around an expression. So can you guys read the code here?
Yes, we can read it.
If you have an option
so
to a little bit make it bigger, would also be good.
Sure, I'll do that.
And sorry, I took your 10 minutes, so you can finish your session by 8:10 today, or worst case, not later than 8:15. Okay.
Great. Is that better?
Yeah,
comparatively. Yeah.
Great. So a while loop requires an expression, and while that expression is satisfied, this while loop is going to keep running. So if I run this, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, as you can see here, we're getting an output of 11. So what's happening is it's starting with a value of x is equal to 1, and it's while x is less than or equal to 10, it's constantly incrementing x by 1. So at the end, we get a value of 11. When the value of x hits 11, the loop stops running. So that's an example of when and how to use the while loop. The for loop is also known as an iterator. It works with another element. So as you can see here, we have a command which says for x in range 5. So we know that because range 5 has 5 elements in it, the for loop is going to run 5 times. So as you can see with the output, you get from 0 to 4. So that's 5 print statements. So that's a sort of quick difference between a while loop and a for loop. Now, you can do something really interesting with a for loop here. You can actually use a for loop to write a list. So if you guys remember, the way you can initiate a list is just give a name and initialize like this, right? Here we have a list. Now, if within the list you put this for loop, a for a is in the range 10, it's actually going to print out a list with digits going from 0 to 9. A very interesting thing about this is you can make that. So this is a to the power of 2. We run this, and we get, so each number is now a square. So 2 is now 4, 3 is now 9, 4 is now 16, and so on. So this is a really cool way that you can use for within a list. Now let's move on to break. What break is doing is, if this condition is met over here, now this is the while loop we had before from here. All I've done is I've added a break condition when x is equal to 5. So the break condition is just going to shut down the loop. It's not going to run anymore. So if you can see the output from here, it stops at 5, because when x equals to 5, we've initiated break. So the value of x is going to be 5. Now, how does that differ from pass? Well, pass just tells Python to just continue. So it's just going to continue running the loop like normal. So there you can see the output is 11, the same output that we had for this while function here, where the output was also 11. So let's look at continue. Now, continue is a bit more complex than that. What continue does is, again, we're using this the for loop now. This is the for loop that we were using in this example here. But this time we're doing range 10 rather than range 5. So what continue is doing is when x equals to 5, it's going to stop this iteration of the loop, and it's going to go back to the next loop. So when you do this, you get count from 0 to 9, but 5 is not here. That's because this print statement when x is equal to 5 didn't initialize, because we said it to, we told Python to continue, so continue would ignore this and it would start the second iteration of the loop. So do you guys have any questions about these statements, break, pass, continue, for, while? I'd like to know what questions you guys have about this.
Right now I don't see any questions over there in the chat.
Okay.
Good to
That's
go.
great.
Yeah.
So I gave this question exercise to you guys a few days ago. I was wondering if you guys attempted it, how you did it. I would love to know your approach.
Before moving ahead, Shad, I have a question. Where do
Yeah.
you recommend using for loops, while loops, and break and continue? What are those use cases? Why do we use them?
Yeah, so a while loop, you should expect to use it when you have an expression. Whereas a for loop should be used when you have something to iterate over. So for example, if I create a, let's say I'm going to create a string, we're going to call it ABCD. Oh, sorry, the content's going to be ABCD of the string. Now, when I use for with this, I know that it's going to run for each of the elements of the string. So the elements of the string are A, B, C, and D. So if I want to run some code and run it individually on A and then on B and then on C and then D, I'm going to use a for loop because I'm iterating over this string. A while loop, I need some kind of expression, and this could be a mathematical expression usually. While that expression is satisfied, the while loop is going to keep running.
Shad, can I help you? Just, can I add one more point to it?
Yeah, please.
So basically, when you use while loop is when you do not know what is the limit. Like, for example, for I will use when I know how many iterations I will go. Say, for example, I want to loop 100 times, then I will use for. If I do not know what is the end of it, I generally prefer while.
Correct. Great. Thank you. So a break statement is basically whenever you want the a loop to stop, you're going to use break. So here, as in this example, I want the loop to stop when x equals to 5. When this statement is true, that's going to stop the entire loop. Now, the continue statement is when I want a certain set of code, which would be under the continue statement, to be skipped if a condition is met. So over here, this is an example of it. I don't want to print 5, right? Here is the example. Here, this is the output for this this loop. I don't want 5 here. That's why before the print, I've put in a condition that when x equals to 5, just continue. And pass is a lot of times when, in the future, we'll see examples when we need to actually tell the loop to just continue regular operation. That would come in, for example, if we're expecting some kind of error and we just want to continue the loop there. There are a few examples of that I'm sure we'll go over in the future. Any more questions?
Sir, there is one question. They want to know one example of nested for loop, if you can do.
Nested for loop? Okay.
Yeah, inner loop.
Sure. Yeah, I had a few examples of this.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll just do a new one, right?
Yeah.
So So here we have a string called test, right? For e in. This is what this for loop is going to do. It's going to iterate each element of test. Now within this, I can have another for loop for I in test as well. So the way this is going to work is this for loop is going to pick A. And when A is picked, this is going to run. This is also going to pick A. So the first iteration of this loop is going to be A selected from here and B selected from here. The second one will be again A selected from here. And because this is a part of this loop, B selected from for this for loop. So let's print these out and see what they look like. Here, so let's see if you can follow this. This A, this is running because of this. This is visible because of this loop, and then this A is coming from this for loop here, and then again this A is going to remain because we're still talking about this loop. Yeah.
I want to add one point. Rather than printing two separately, print one in a combined string, A, B, A, C, A, D. They're going to more understandable, I believe.
What do you mean? So you repeat that?
First character from the first loop and the second character from the second loop. So the combination of first and second. So A, B, A, C, A, D, like that.
Okay, got
you understand,
it.
right?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Just the concatenate of the string. I think simply E plus I is fine, I believe.
Oh, okay. I was going to let's do
Yeah,
this.
yeah, that's same, yeah.
Yeah. Is this more clear? So you can see that this first letter over here is from the outer loop. And then the second one is from the inner loop. So first it's going to run all of these for just A. And then again for B, and then C, and then D. Is that a good example of a nested loop? I hope that
should be
answers
fine,
the question. Yeah.
Yep.
There is no more question on
Pretty
it.
clear.
Great. So again, let's go back to the exercise. Did anyone attempt it? I'd like to know how people solved it, what you guys did.
If anyone has done that thing,
Yeah,
then put your code into the comment or
yeah,
maybe...
even if you just unmute yourself and just talk about what you did, that would be great.
Yeah, that is good too.
Does anyone want to contribute?
Naru saying I used the built-in function on Python. That is fine. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
use maybe math
yeah,
or right?
That's a smart way to do it. So I'm guessing what you did was you just took a number, you put it to the power of 1 divided by 3. I'm guessing that's what you did, right?
Yeah, should be fine. Yeah, that's the way maybe they did.
Yeah. Now I'm going to show another way of doing this. And in fact, I'll just write it from scratch. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a while loop to try to sort of guess what the cube root would be. So I'm going to initialize, let's say this number over here is 32, right? And I'm going to set the answer equals to 0. Now what I can do is I can create a while loop, which is running on the condition answer to the power of 3, because we're looking for the cube root. And this will be while this is less than or equal to, let me just confirm, yeah, equal to x right here. So we're going to increment answer is equal to answer plus 1. let's see. There is one error here. I would like people to tell me what the error is with this code. Anyone? Okay. So does anyone have?
I don't see any comments over there, but yeah.
Okay. So the error with this is that we actually need to add. This is 1. This is not correct. We need to give it a smaller value. So the smaller value here would be this. Right. So what's happening is it's taking the while loop here, and it's testing whether the answer to the power of 3 is less than or equal to x. While this is less, it's incrementing answer, which is 0, by 0.01. So it's going to keep adding a bit, a very small amount to answer until this condition is met, right? And because we want the loop to not run when this condition is met, we're just going to subtract the increment from x. So here we go. Here's the answer. So 32, the cube root is going to be 3.179. So that's another way that we can use a while loop to do these mathematical functions. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
There is one question. Is the increment too big by Naru?
Yeah, so the way this works is you could have any increment, right? So the smaller the increment, the slower this process is going to be. So if I made this 0.001 and then I run it, it's more accurate, but I'm running more loops. So, if you made this 0.1, it's going to be much quicker, but the answer is going to be less precise. So another way to think of this increment is its precision. So there's a give and take between how precise you want something to be and how fast you want it to be. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to functions now. So functions are a block of code that perform specific actions. There are a few benefits of using functions. One is that you can make your code very reusable. You don't have to write the same thing over and over again. You can just write it once as a function and then call that function whenever you want. This it also keeps your code base very organized. So one thing that you can do, which is pretty interesting, is if you guys add another file to your project here, you can actually define a function in one file and then call it in a second file. So here I can actually call a function that's been defined here. So here's a function. We'll get to this later, but you can basically put all your functions in one file and then call them in another file. So it keeps your code base very organized. Again, because everything's more organized, you can work in a team in a much easier fashion. Now, functions are also used in recursion. We aren't going to cover recursion right now, but it's something to keep in mind. Another thing to remember is that functions can be built in or user defined. One thing you guys can do is so to see various built-in functions, you can open, just create this empty list, empty tuple, and just any text or any digit, right? I'd like you guys to try it right now. And then just do li, or whatever the name of the list is, dot. So this m refers to method functions. Just think of these as functions for now. So because we're using PyCharm as an IDE, it's telling us all the different built-in functions that you can use with a list. So you have append, clear, copy. Again, we aren't going into these, but you can try these on your own, right? What functions can work with, again, list, a tuple, text, or digit. So what is a function? Here is a very simple function. You use this command, def, to create a function. This would be the name of the function, and these would be the inputs. Another word for these are parameters. So here you have a function that all it's saying is you take this as an input and you print out this statement where this is going to be the first name and this is going to be the last name. So let's see that as an example. Here I have this function. Let me just minimize this. So here's a function print name. When I run this code, let's see what I get. There you go. So I had to define this function just once, where I told it to print my first name and my last name. And then I can initialize it as many times as I want with any value. And all it's going to do is going to print a statement. Your name is, and the first parameter would come over here. Second parameter would go over here. Does anyone have any questions on this?
There is no questions on it yet.
Okay. So again, I just covered this. When you're creating a function and you give it some input, that is considered a parameter. When you call a function and you assign a value to that input, it could be any kind of value. It could even be a list or a tuple or anything. That is called an argument. So in this example here, where we have a function that subtracts B from A. Here, because we're making it, A and B will be considered parameters. It's really useful to keep that in mind, the difference between parameters and arguments. So again, here's an example of an argument. Now we are calling this function that we made. So this again, we want to subtract 5 from 10. So because we're calling it now, 10 is an argument and 5 is also an argument. Another thing I want to cover with functions are global versus local variables. So when you create a function and you assign a variable within that function, for example, over here, y is equal to 1, that y is going to be that y value is going to be local to this function, right? So if I was to take this code and try to find out the value of y outside of this function, I would get an error because y is only local to this function here. X is an example of a global variable because it's outside of the function. So x over here is, if I ask Python the value of x, it's going to tell me that it's 10 because it's not a value local to the function. It's a global variable. Right. So let me look at more examples of functions. So if you let's go back to that exercise that I told you about. There's a very neat way that we can actually package this code into a function. And I've done it over here. Again, we're doing the same thing. We're going to call this function find the nth root. We're going to give it as a argument, we're going to give it a number and a root. And then again, we're setting the answer to 0 like we did before. We're running a while loop and we can set, again, we're going to write a root over here. So whatever value is fed into this function as a root is going to come over here as a root. So number is going to go over here. Root is going to go over here because that's how we've created the function. So now what this function can allow you to do, you give it any number and any root that you're looking for, and it's going to immediately tell you what that value is. So I have the output for it here. Here you go. So these are all the answers. So it starts from here. So again, I want to find the fifth root of 10. I got 1.59. I want to find the fifth root of 21. I got 1.84. So what we've done is that we've taken this initial piece of code that we worked on and we've packaged it into a function so we can call it multiple times. Any questions on this? Or this piece of code? Is anyone having any difficulty understanding this? I'd love to know.
Right. No, there is no question, but are we going to show the globals versus local variable example over here?
Yeah, I can show that. But before I get into that, before I get into that, I just want to know if someone has any question about this, because any question at all if you have about how this function is working.
No, I don't see any questions on it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So I can show you an example of how local and global variables work. So let's say I make a test1 equal to 2. Right. Then yeah, so I just created this function really quick. It doesn't do anything, but what I want to show is that right now, if we print the value of test1, it should be 2. It should not be 5, because 5, the value 5 is local to this function. So if I just quickly print, oh, sorry. So yeah, this is notation. So you need to have a colon over here if you want this function to work. Here you go. So even though within the function, I'm saying the test1 is 5, over here, test1 is going to be this one, because this is the global value variable. It's not, this is the local variable. Any questions?
No questions on that. I'm expecting someone should bring the questions here if they are not clear. But
Here's one question from
Yeah.
Nevin.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
When I was trying out different stuff with code, I noticed that if I want to use the global test1 variable in my function, that I have to mention the name of the variable with the keyword global inside of
Yes.
the function. Is that true?
Yes, that's
But
true.
is that like the usual way how you use it?
No, so
Oh.
if you're defining a variable inside a function, Python is going to assume that it's local unless you specify that it's global, right? So if you really want to specify a value within a function over here, for example, and you want it to be global, you have to then specify. We don't use that often because you can basically just have that same value outside of the function and it's automatically going to be global. So you don't have to necessarily do that. In that scenario, I would recommend just writing it outside of the function and it's automatically going to be global.
I want to add one comment
Yeah.
here based on her questions. Only you have to define the global keyword inside your function where you are using your global variable, because you want to manipulate or you want to utilize your value of the global variable inside your function. And maybe you want to intentionally change that global value at some point of your operations, then yes, you have to use the global keyword inside your functions to identify you are referring the original value of the global variable and you're modifying or you're manipulating or you're using for your task. Is that right, Shah?
Okay, so yeah, any more questions?
There is one question say, so the local variable doesn't override the global variable. And the other question is global and local just like a public and private in Java? Yes. Yeah. Can you answer of that?
Yeah, if I don't know much about Java, so if you can answer that, that would be great.
Yes, like public is just you can use anywhere in your one same module or the different module if you're referencing as a class base. I don't know too much in Java too, but the concept of public and private is yes. Private is only accessible through inside your own class, The public maybe you can use as a other class if you are referring, creating the object of that class and utilizing in other place. So you can access only public properties of that class or object, not the private one.
Okay, so I want people to try this right now. Create another file in this directory here. So the files need to be in the same directory, like I have the end file here, functions and main. Now on one file, create a function. So over here is an example of a function, a sum of first and second. It's going to return first plus second. Now what you can do is that you can go on another Python file in this directory, and you can actually bring that function in. So here's the code for that. So from functions, because the name of the file is functions, we're importing sum. Sum is the name of this function over here. So now, even though this function isn't defined within this file, we can actually still use it. So for example, sum oh, sorry about that. Is this main? One second. Yeah, I'm just going to see why it's not running, but ideally what should happen is that because I'm importing this sum function here, it should give me 11. Oh, here it is. So as you can see, I'm getting I'm using this function from a different file. So you've probably seen a return written quite a few times. Does anyone want to guess what return does? Is there anyone who wants to talk about what they think return is? You can just unmute yourself and speak.
It just returns the string, the values to the main function where it is being called.
Yeah, so what return is doing is return ends the function, and whatever you tell it to return, it's going to return that as a value. So I could say over here that A is equal to sum of, let's say, 10 and 5, right? Now I'm going to print A. Let's go to functions. Let's run this. 15. So here you go. What it's doing, because you have a return function here, it's assigning 15 to A. So when we print A, we get the value 15. Now you can also have multiple functions within a function within a function. That's also a possibility over here. So this is an example of that. So I have this outer function. Within it, we have another function, which is all it does is takes in a name and it prints out hello before it. So when you put in a name in the outer function, it's going to go in as an argument of the second function. And when you call this function, you're going to call the outer function. You can't call the inner one. You have to call the outer one. When you call the outer one, it's going to just print this because the actual work is happening within the inner function. Does that make sense? Any questions?
No questions so far on this particular point. Yeah, there are questions about the Java comparison with Python, but I'm trying to reply those questions.
Yeah, actually, even sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt. I have a question. So I'm also comparing with Java. I'm not sure whether it's the right approach to compare Python with Java, because in Java we have we can create multiple classes, and when we create the methods, we'll call, if it we will declare as a um, public variable, and then we'll try to call it, right? Is it the same concept? Do we have similar concept in the Python as well?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not very good at Java. Most of the people here are probably beginners, so they wouldn't have much of an idea either. I'm sure Hetal can answer those questions at the end of the session.
Yeah, I will.
Comparison to
I will
Java.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to cover, yeah. So here's, if you want to read more on the return statement, it returns a specific value. Here's an example. You assign a value num, whatever is equal to this function is going to be assigned the value that you put in over here. So now we're going to go over Lambda functions. So Lambda functions are small functions. They're usually intended for single use. I mean, so basically you use them the moment you create them. Sorry about that. Let's bring that up. So here's an example of a Lambda function. So I'm saying lambda x, and now I'm going to write it. So the value of x should be the square of x, right? And I'm assigning that value, the name square. So whenever I write square and put any value here, I'm going to get the square of this number. And here we go. This is the output for this one. So you could do anything to it. You can make this 6. I could run the same thing. Again, you get a very large number. So what you can do with these are very cool, because you can actually put a lambda function within as a argument into a function. So when you're working with a function, let's say over here, you could actually put a lambda function in here as well. So that was pretty interesting. Again, any questions on functions? Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. I decided it would be interesting if we actually did a proper sort of programming question. If you can read this, I'd like you guys to read this and sort of try it on your own. Firstly, why don't you tell me if you guys can read the text here? You can read it.
Yes, I can read it.
Okay, so just read this and tell me if you guys know any way of solving this question. Here is an example of what you want, right? You want, this is going to be the value of j, this is going to be the value of s, you're going to get 3. So what the question basically is you have stones and you have a list of jewels. You have to figure out which of the stone is a jewel. So the jewels are lowercase a and uppercase a. The stones have these values. So you can see that lowercase a and uppercase a, so that's 3 jewels you have here. So the output should be 3. So does anyone know how we can solve this? Or any suggestion as to how we would do it?
How about if-else conditions?
Yeah, how would you use it? Tell me about how you would use a. So you're right. We can use an if condition here, right? How would you use it?
Yep.
We will have a nested for loop.
So if a in s, if a small a in s, then find and add it to a variable, which might be a functional variable or a global variable, and then do put another if condition for capital A.
Right. So one thing you need to understand is that you can have any number over here, right? So you could have a small f as well. You can have c. You don't know if it's going to be small a and big A. So you can't hard code anything here.
Okay. Hi.
Yes.
We can have a nested for loop for both the strings. And then we can assign it to a dummy variable once the match is found.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, we have to work with a let's solve this and see how we can do it. And I encourage you guys to solve this sort of at the same time as well, and we can see how our solutions differ. There are many ways of doing this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Let me just write these down first. And if anyone solves it, I would love to know, like you can tell me to stop and we'll hear how you did it. So we can do for element n, we want to filter out words from S, and this is the larger string. So we can do, and then we'll do a if condition, right? If E, so when we write if E, it's going to take each element from this, and we can now compare it with something. If E in, you can write J over here, right? So we can do it with a nested for loop as well, but we can also do it with just one for loop and an if condition. So let's just see what happens here. This is not the solution, but I want to show you guys what's happening. So here we've actually found our jewels from the stone, right? Again, how's it working? It's taking this one, it's checking if this exists, if a small a exists in J. If it does, it's printing this. It's doing the same thing for capital A. It's checking if it exists in joules. It does, it prints it out, right? Now, what we want to do is we want to give it a count. So what we can do is we can initialize a counter equal to 0, right? When this is met, you can continue printing it, but I want to increment my counter 1. So plus equals to 1 just means add 1 to the count, right? And then outside of the loop, we're going to print the count. So does anyone follow this? Does anyone have questions on how this is happening? I haven't run it yet, but I'd love to see what people think about this. And if there are any questions.
Not a question. It is not a question, but there is a discussion going on. I'm looking over to you.
Okay.
Because there's too many questions at the same time, so I'm just
okay.
one after the other.
So here we go. We have the answer.
We can keep a few minutes, like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, to answer some of the questions together at the end as well.
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, what I've done is now I'm getting the count here because I set a counter as 0. Now I could give it any list here, right? Any number of A's, capital A. Let's do a AJ, and then we'll add any number over here. It's going to, this code is going to work for it. Any letter here, this number is going to work for it. Now it's saying we have 11 joules from this. Now for the next step, let's make a function out of this, where you're going to, as an input, take a string which has the joules, a string which has the stones, and then we want the count from there, right? So again, this is if you want to define a function, you write def. Let's name it find joules. So the input is going to be joules and stones. Now we've already done this, so we can just copy paste this stuff here. Again, so this is a good thing to keep in mind. The content of the function is whatever is indented in. So whatever is under it has to be indented. If it's not indented, that won't be part of the function. Does everyone follow this, or does anyone have questions?
No, everybody's following. I think Sonali is doing the similar way you are doing, looks like.
Okay, yeah. That's great. That's great. So let's give it some inputs and see what we get. So let's put this in a print statement. Let's see what we get. So, is it actually 11, or is there something wrong here?
Actually, I cannot see your answer because my toolbar is overriding your.
You need to use the variables arguments in the for loops. You use S and J. So.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry. Good catch. Good catch. For E in stones. There we go. So we got an output of 2 over here. Let's see if that's correct. So we have one small a over here and one small b over here. So that's correct. Does everyone follow this? Okay, so let's to end this off over the next 10 minutes. Let's just take some questions and see where people are struggling.
Okay. I think the exercise they are following with you, I believe, and they didn't bring in any questions yet. Maybe should be later on they will come up with some question. But there was one question about the lambda expression. They would like to have a more explanation on lambda function and when to use.
Okay, sure. Let me just bring this into a better workspace.
I will answer the question about the Java related later on, because I believe there is to identify the private variable or a function, you have to use double underscore. Other than that, by default is public. So I will cover up this after the session.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I will SQUR. Yeah. What I'll do is I'm going to, for this same lambda function, I'll create a regular function. And then you can see how they compare and how using a lambda function in this sort of, because you're doing something very simple, how that would actually save an extra line of code. Okay.
Yeah.
The input here can be X. We're going to return so these two are basically doing the same thing. Here we're doing using lambda because it's inline. It's just taking the X and it's going to output the square of X. Again, doing the same thing over here. We're giving it a digit over here. It's going to give us the square. All lambda function, the only thing lambda is allowing us to do is to make this process a lot shorter. So you can easily sort of get minor calculations done.
I would like to add some comments over there too.
Yeah.
So lambda is basically kind of the function without name, kind of anonymous functions, and mostly get used in like inline operations. So like, let's say if you have one line of expression you want to do in between your functions, you rather than giving any specific name to just the one line of code, you can just put the lambda expressions, which is considered as an anonymous function without any name, and it will work like that way. Mostly single expression you can use for a single kind of expression, not a multiple line function. Good.
Yeah, that's great. And again, there are built-in functions in Python called map and filter. We aren't going to go into these right now.
Yeah.
But you can actually put a Lambda function within when you're calling a map function or a filter function. And again, as we do more problems in the future, we'll see examples of that.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I don't see any more questions right now. No more questions.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. I think we can focus. Is there anything missing from our agenda? I don't think so.
We did cover functions.
Right?
I will also introduce this book. This is a free book that's available on GitHub. You can go on page 35 here, and you get a detailed idea of what functions are and how they work. So I would encourage people who want to know more about functions to check this book out.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
And one more question. I'm curious. Did anyone solve this question in a different way than what I did?
I don't see any comments from audience.
I encourage everyone to unmute if they can just speak, right? So
yeah, they can speak, and there should be definitely a more than one solution. There should be different ways to do it.
Yeah, because
some people thinking of inner for loop. Yes, you can do it definitely. Instead of that is also another way to do by reading each of the loop characters and mapping. Also, somebody to explain before we are asking a question about that original problem. Using the temporary variable where they are holding the match found and then they counting. I think maybe that's the plan of that explanation. That's so the way you can do it.
Yeah. So again, the trick over here is just the in.
Sorted the code.
The in statement over here, right?
Yes.
We haven't covered this much before, but if you can use the in statement to basically check if something if element E exists in this, and this could be anything, right? This could be a string, it could be a list or anything. Let me ask you guys another question to see what your understanding is of this. So I'm going to create a list, and let's give it 2 strings. So who can tell me the value of this? Any ideas?
That's a good question.
K.
Yeah. K, right? So why don't you tell me how you got to K?
So list has the index starting from 0, but if we start from the right side, then it starts from -1. So it will select the Malik first, and then it will again start from the right. So the rightmost is
correct.
K, right?
Yeah,
that's great.
That's great. Yeah, negative indexing.
Yeah. Great. So any other questions?
Nope. There is no more question. Any other question? Nope.
Hetal, do you want to add anything about functions?
As you already put the link to read for them, but there are different types of like arguments. If you want to stress little bit on a type of parameters and like the arguments kind of thing, like keyword arguments, or maybe just simply optional parameters and all those things. If you want to, if we have time, we can do that. Otherwise, maybe they can come up with more questions while they do the exercise at home.
Yeah, one other thing I want people to read is just get a slight introduction to what recursion is, because when you're using functions, you can actually do recursion with them. If you're doing recursion, we should probably dedicate a whole session to it, but just read up on what recursion is and see if you can understand what it means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so might be we're going to bring some question during after this session, maybe before the next session.
Yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to write them, and Hetal and I will answer them.
Yeah. Do we have exercise to give them for today, like at home, or just to them to understand by reading that link concept?
I would suggest you read that link and read up on recursion. I'll give you a question on recursion sometime over the weekend, right? So just get an understanding of it, and I'll give you a relatively simple question to see if you understand what recursion is.
For me, Paramveer asking again one lambda expression example.
Okay.
I think maybe he missed, or I don't know. You just gave it example. It's there.
Yeah. Again, let me just go over this again, right? These two, they're doing the same exact thing, right? This is just a regular function. This is a lambda function. Again, we're going to say lambda x, and this could be anything, right? This could be y, and then I can tell the computer how we wanted to manipulate y. So there's nothing hard-coded over here, right? So whatever...
we can print it and show them,
Yeah.
And also the print from the functions too. So it should be the same value.
Yeah, got it. Here we go. We can see that both these functions do the same thing. All we're doing here is we're having this function be inline, right? Lambda y, when you take y, you just get the square of it. And when we print that, we get 36. Same thing over here with this function. We get this x as an input. We want to return the square of that value. So we're getting 36 here as well. Does that clear it up?
Should be. I didn't see any question from him. It is just like a single line expression. Instead of creating a function having just the one line of expression, rather than creating the function, you can use just the lambda as a like anonymous function, and you can just do the single line expressions there instead of. If you have more than one line, definitely you have to use the function.
Yeah, anything you can do with the lambda, you can do it with this as well, right? The only benefit of this is just one line, and you can quickly input it and do a process.
Yeah. You can put in a, like, if you have a big complex function and where you have to have some manipulations to done, just quickly some expressions or calculation, you can use like lambda and do it, and that will work. Okay. For me, it is okay for this answer. Yeah, that's good.
Great. It's 8:05. Do you want to end the session here, or do you want to take more questions?
I don't see any questions here. Maybe Kader wants to put some comments or informations.
Hetal, I'm Shad here. I just have one logistic request. I think some people regarding GitHub access. If anyone wants access to it, there is a thread going on in the Codeathon group. You can just provide your GitHub IDs there. Some I've already provided. I've added them. They just need to accept. Some of them have accepted. Some have not accepted the request.
Okay.
So they can go ahead and do it. If anyone else wants to be added into the GitHub teams, just send me the GitHub IDs.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good.
Great. Kader, would you like to add anything, or can we close the session off?
I think we can close the session once you're done, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'm done. Are there any more questions? Again, if there's any question you have right now, feel free to ask it. Or you can even post it there and I'll answer it whenever you post it.
Okay, that's fine. And maybe in the next session, we will cover something about the private and public concepts related. We will try to cover up to avoid them confusion on it.
Yeah, again, I think most people here don't really know any programming. They're learning Python as a first language.
Yeah, they don't know, but just when we are trying to cover, maybe we can cover in during the class explanation. If we are covering basics of class, then we
that would be better.
That would be better. Yeah.
Great. So that's it for today. Again, I
hey,
encourage
Shad,
you. Yeah.
Khader,
Hi,
yeah,
Khader.
yeah. Good session, good session. Just want to make sure, I keep saying this. Please continue to keep in touch after and before the events, right? Program. Ask questions and be engaged. That's my kind ask. Apart from that, all good. Happy about this today's session. Great work, Shad and Hetal. Looking forward to the next session.
Great. We're looking forward to it as well. Again, I encourage everyone to like sort of homework for today. Just read up on functions in the link I sent, and you can also read up on recursion. In fact, that book also contains a detailed description on recursion. I'm sure we can cover that in the next session.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Kada, should we end up the meeting?
Yeah, all good, all good. Take lead.
Okay.
You guys are the boss.
Okay,
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Perfect. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.